Millionaire's son never left his wheelchair until a homeless woman did this. Richard Thompson pushed his son's wheelchair through Central Park in Newport with the weight of despair on his shoulders. 3 years had passed since little Ethan, just 3 years old, simply stopped walking without any medical explanation that made sense. That's when a woman in tattered clothes and a beige cap on her head did something that would change everything forever. She lay down on the dirty park ground, lifted her legs and raised the boy with her feet, making him fly like a little airplane. For the first time in months, Ethan let out a laugh that echoed through the entire park. "What do you think you're doing?" Richard shouted, running toward the woman. "Take your hands off my son right now." The woman carefully lowered Ethan and slowly stood up. Her eyes held a deep sadness, but also a sweetness Richard couldn't completely ignore. "I'm sorry, sir, I just wanted to help. I saw the boy was so quiet," she murmured, brushing the dirt off her hands. "We don't need your help." Richard put Ethan back in the wheelchair, but noticed the boy couldn't stop looking at the woman. "Let's go, Ethan." As they walked away, Richard heard the woman whispering to someone who wasn't there. "See, Emma Rose? The boy laughed just like you used to when I made you fly like that." Richard stopped for a moment, feeling a chill. He turned and saw the woman sitting alone on the bench, talking to the air. He shook his head and kept walking, but Ethan craned his neck to keep looking back. That night, in the mansion in Malibu, Richard couldn't get the scene out of his head. For 2 years, since the traumatic separation with Jennifer, Ethan had withdrawn into a silence that haunted the house. The terrible fight they had witnessed, with screams, broken dishes, and his mother storming out, had scarred the boy in a way no doctor could explain or cure. Physically, Ethan was fine. All tests showed he could walk normally, but he simply refused. It was as if his legs had forgotten how to work, not because of any physical issue, but because of something much deeper and more painful. The next day, against his better judgment, Richard ended up passing through the same park. Ethan immediately started pointing toward where the woman had been the day before. She was there again, on the same bench, whispering to her invisible companion. "Daddy lady," Ethan said, one of the few words he had spoken in recent times. Richard sighed. He parked the car and pushed the wheelchair to a nearby bench, keeping a safe distance. The woman looked their way and timidly waved at Ethan, who returned a shy little smile. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. "What's your name?" Richard asked, still wary. "My name's Grace, but you can call me Gracie." "And you, handsome boy, what's your name?" she said to Ethan in a sweet voice. "Ethan," the boy replied excitedly, stretching his little arms toward her. Richard was surprised. Ethan rarely spoke to strangers and never showed any desire to interact with anyone. Can I play with him again? I promise I'll be careful," Grace asked humbly. Richard hesitated, but Ethan started fussing, something he hadn't done in months. Reluctantly, Richard agreed but kept a close watch on every move. Grace approached slowly and began making funny faces at Ethan. Then, carefully, she lifted him from the wheelchair and placed him in her lap, making airplane motions with him. Ethan laughed joyfully, a sound Richard hadn't heard in so long he'd forgotten how good it was. "Fly, Ethan, fly high like a little bird," Grace would say, and Ethan would stretch out his little arms like an airplane. After a few minutes, she added, "What if you tried flying with your legs, Ethan? Just like airplanes do when they land?" Richard tensed up but watched as Grace helped Ethan stand, holding his tiny hands. The boy stayed on his feet for a few seconds, something he hadn't done in a long time, before sitting back down. "Well done, champ. Tomorrow you'll fly a little more, okay?" That night, Ethan was more excited than Richard had seen him in years. During dinner, the boy couldn't stop talking about the lady in the park and how he had flown like an airplane. Margaret, the housekeeper who had cared for Ethan for 2 years, remarked, "Dr. Thompson, it's been so long since I've seen Ethan like this. What happened today?" Richard told her about meeting Grace, leaving out his suspicions about the woman's mental state. "Maybe it's good for him to have a different female figure around, you know? Ever since Mrs. Jennifer left," Margaret said carefully. Richard sighed heavily. The separation had been a nightmare. Jennifer, after years of a turbulent marriage, had exploded in a rage that even shocked him. She screamed that she couldn't take being a mother anymore, that she wanted her life back, that she felt trapped. The fight ended with her throwing her wedding rings on the floor and storming out, vowing never to return. Ethan had watched it all, hiding behind the stairs. The next day, he simply stopped walking. It was as if his legs had given up along with his will to explore the world. Over the following days, Richard started taking Ethan to the park every evening after work. Grace was always there, and the bond between her and the boy grew more natural. Ethan even became impatient during the day, asking when they'd see Aunt Gracie. One afternoon, as Grace played with Ethan, Richard overheard her talking to her invisible companion again. "Look, Emma Rose, how strong he's growing. You would have loved him, my girl. The two of you would have played so much together." A chill ran through Richard. He decided to investigate quietly. The next day, while Ethan napped, Richard went to the park early. He found Anthony, the doorman from the building across the street, sweeping the sidewalk. "Mr. Anthony, do you know that woman who's always on the park bench?" "Mrs. Grace." "Oh yes, poor thing. She's been around here for almost 3 years. Is she normal? I've noticed she talks to herself." Anthony stopped sweeping and looked at Richard with pity. "Well, doctor, Mrs. Grace's story is a sad one. She lost her little girl about 4 years ago, a beautiful child, just about Ethan's age. There was a terrible accident at home, boiling water. The girl didn't make it." Richard's stomach twisted. Grace never recovered, lost her teaching job, lost her home, lost everything. She's been on the streets ever since, but she always comes back to this park because it's where she used to play with Emma Rose every day. Emma Rose was her daughter's name? Yes. Mrs. Grace talks to her every day, as if she was still here. At first, we thought it was strange, but then we realized it's her way of coping with the pain. Richard fell silent, processing the information. Suddenly, Grace's dedication to Ethan made so much more sense, as did the deep sadness in her eyes. "She's a good person, Doctor. I've never seen her harm anyone. In fact, whenever she sees a child crying in the park, she goes over and comforts them." That night, Richard couldn't sleep. Grace's story had moved him in ways he hadn't expected. At the same time, he worried about leaving Ethan in the care of someone who clearly needed psychological help. The next day, he took Ethan to the child psychiatrist, Dr. Wilson, who had been following his case for 2 years. "Dr. Wilson, Ethan has shown significant improvement lately. He's more talkative, happier." "That's wonderful, Richard. What changed in his routine?" Richard told him about Grace, leaving out details about her mental condition. "Interesting. Ethan clearly responded well to this new female presence. The trauma of the separation deeply affected his relationship with maternal figures. Perhaps this woman is filling an important emotional void. Do you think it's safe to continue these meetings? As long as it's supervised and the person is trustworthy, it could be very beneficial. Ethan needs to rebuild trust in relationships, especially with women. His mother left a very deep wound in him." Encouraged by the doctor's words, Richard decided to keep visiting the park but to observe Grace more closely. Over the next few weeks, he noticed she truly had a special gift with children. Whenever a crying child appeared in the park, Grace would calm them with her creative little games. It was as if she understood children's language in a very unique way. One day, Richard arrived at the park earlier and found Grace helping a mother with twin toddlers who wouldn't stop crying. She was juggling small stones, humming a nursery rhyme. The children stopped crying instantly, mesmerized. "Thank you so much, ma'am. I don't know how you do it," the relieved mother said. "Children love magic, simple things adults forget to do," Grace replied with a sad smile. When the family left, Grace sat back on the bench and resumed her conversation with Emma Rose. "See, sweetheart? Today we helped 2 little ones smile. You always loved when I did these little tricks, didn't you?" Richard approached and for the first time sat beside her on the bench. "Grace, may I ask you something personal?" She looked surprised but nodded. "Is Emma Rose your daughter?" Grace's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "She was. She passed 4 years ago, but to me she's still here, I know it seems like madness to others, but it's the only way I can go on. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. And I'm sorry for Ethan's loss too. Ethan hasn't lost anything. He's fine. Oh, but he has, young man. He's lost trust, lost joy, lost the desire to explore the world. I recognize that pain in his eyes because I've seen it in the mirror. Richard fell silent, struck by Grace's insight. What happened with his mother? She couldn't handle motherhood. Thought it would be different. When she realized being a mother changes everything, she snapped, ran out of the house screaming she wanted her life back. And Ethan saw all that. Unfortunately, yes. The next day, he stopped walking. It's like his little legs gave up along with his heart. Grace grew thoughtful for a moment. You know what I used to do when Emma Rose was sad? I'd make her fly. Told her that when we're flying, no problem can reach us. That's why Ethan loves the airplane game so much. Just then, Ethan came running up in his wheelchair, pushed by Margaret. Aunt Gracie, Aunt Gracie, he shouted excitedly. Hello, my little airplane. How was your day? Good, I want to fly. Grace glanced at Richard for permission, and he nodded. She lifted Ethan from the chair and began their usual game. But this time, when she set him on his feet, he took 2 small steps on his own before sitting back down. Richard and Margaret exchanged stunned looks. Ethan, you walked, Margaret exclaimed. I flew, Ethan corrected, grinning. That night, Richard made a decision that would change everything. He called Grace. He had given her his number for emergencies and made an offer. Grace, I'd like to offer you a job. A job? What kind of job? I want to hire you to take care of Ethan for a few hours each day, with a fair wage, food, and a place to stay. On the other end of the line, there was a long silence. Richard, that's very generous, but I can't. Why not? Because if I get too attached to Ethan, if he becomes part of my life, I won't be able to handle it when I have to leave. I've already lost 1 child. I can't go through that again. Who said you'd have to leave? Life did, Richard. People like me don't stay in one place for long. Pain always ends up driving us away. Richard grew thoughtful. He could tell Grace was afraid of emotional attachment, but at the same time, he saw how much she was helping Ethan. What if it was just for a few weeks, just to see how it goes? Grace hesitated. I need to think about it. The following week, things changed drastically. Jennifer showed up unexpectedly at the mansion, demanding to see Ethan. Where's my son? She shouted as soon as Margaret opened the door. Mrs. Jennifer, what a surprise. Ethan is at the park with Mr. Richard. The park? What park? Why is my son outside instead of doing physical therapy? Margaret didn't know how to respond. Jennifer had disappeared for 2 years without a word and now acted as if she'd never left. When Richard arrived with Ethan, the tension was immediate. Jennifer, what are you doing here? I came to see my son, and to find out why you're not taking proper care of him. Ethan, seeing his mother, shrank in his wheelchair and began to cry softly. Proper care? Where have you been these past 2 years, Jennifer? That doesn't matter now. What matters is I heard you're letting homeless women take care of our son. Richard felt his blood boil. How did you find out? I have my sources. A homeless woman playing with a child who can't walk? That's neglect, Richard. Grace has helped Ethan more than any doctor has in 2 years. Grace, you gave the homeless woman a name. Jennifer laughed scornfully. Richard, you've completely lost your mind. Ethan started crying louder, clearly distressed by the argument. Stop it, Jennifer. You're scaring Ethan. I'm scaring him. You're the one exposing our son to a crazy woman who talks to herself. Richard fell silent. How did Jennifer know Grace talked to herself? Who told you these details? I saw it myself. I passed by the park yesterday and saw that woman talking to thin air, and I saw her putting her dirty hands on our son. You've been spying on us? I've been protecting my son from an irresponsible father. The argument escalated quickly. Ethan cried harder, and Margaret tried unsuccessfully to calm him. Enough! Richard shouted. You can't show up here after 2 years and start dictating how I raise Ethan. Yes, I can. I'm his mother. Mother? What mother abandons her 3-year-old and disappears for 2 years? I didn't abandon him. I needed time to find myself. And did you? Jennifer hesitated, her anger giving way to vulnerability. I'm trying. I'm in therapy, trying to be a better person. And you decided you're ready to be a mother again? I decided I want to try, but I can't let you put our son at risk. At that moment, Ethan managed to stand up from his wheelchair on his own and stumbled toward his room, screaming, "No yelling! No yelling!" Richard and Jennifer froze, realizing they had just recreated the exact trauma that had broken Ethan 2 years ago. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The next day, Grace immediately noticed something was wrong when Richard arrived at the Central Park. Ethan was quiet, withdrawn, exactly as he had been 2 years earlier. What happened? She asked worriedly. Richard told her about Jennifer's sudden appearance and the argument they'd had. And how did Ethan react? Badly, very badly. He got out of his wheelchair on his own for the first time, but only to run away from the shouting. Grace shook her head sadly. Poor child, he thought he was going to lose someone else. What do you mean? Richard, Ethan didn't stop walking because of the separation. He stopped walking because he was afraid that if he grew up, if he became more independent, you'd leave too. Richard was stunned by her explanation. In the mind of a 3-year-old, growing up means being left alone. His mother walked away screaming she didn't want to be a mother. To him, being a child is the problem. My God, I never thought of it that way. That's why he loves flying. When he's flying, he isn't growing up. He's just playing. It's safe. That day, Ethan barely responded to Grace's attempts to get him to play. He had completely regressed. Aunt Gracie, is Mommy leaving again? He asked in a small voice. I don't know, sweetheart, but your daddy won't, that's for sure. How do you know? Because people who truly love you don't abandon you, Ethan. Your daddy truly loves you. Will you leave? Grace felt her heart tighten. This was exactly what she feared, the emotional attachment she wasn't sure she could sustain. I'll always be here whenever you need me. It wasn't quite an answer, but it was all she could say. That night, Jennifer returned to the mansion with a proposal. Richard, I spoke to my lawyer. I want shared custody of Ethan. Shared custody? After being gone for 2 years? I have rights as his mother, especially after seeing how you're raising him. How I'm raising him? By letting an unstable woman near a traumatized child. Any judge would side with me. Richard felt his world crumbling. He knew legally Jennifer had a case. The situation with Grace, seen from the outside, could easily look irresponsible. What do you want, Jennifer? I want you to cut ties with that homeless woman immediately. And I want to start spending weekends with Ethan. And if I refuse, then I'll take you to court and demand full custody. I have proof of negligence. Richard was cornered. If he fought, he could lose Ethan completely. If he gave in, he'd lose the only person who'd been able to help his son. I need time to think. You have until Monday. Over the weekend, Richard took Ethan to the Central Park, knowing it might be the last time. Grace sensed the tension in the air. Something's going on, isn't it? Ethan's mother is back. She wants me to stop bringing him here. Grace lowered her head, as if she'd been expecting this moment. I understand. You understand? I understand a mother wanting to protect her child. I understand the situation is complicated. And I understand this might be what's best for Ethan. How can it be best? You're the only one who can make him smile. Richard, I'm not stable. You know it. I know it. Maybe his mother is right. Ethan was playing alone near the bench, seemingly unaware of their conversation. Grace, have you ever thought about getting help? Therapy, treatment? For what? To convince myself my daughter isn't here, to force myself to accept she's gone. So you can live again. I am living, Richard. In my own way, but I'm living. But you're not happy. Happiness is a luxury some people can't afford. At that moment, Ethan approached them. Aunt Gracie, are you leaving? Grace knelt down to his level. Ethan, Sometimes people have to leave even when they don't want to. Why? Because sometimes it's better for everyone. But I don't want you to go. I know, my little airplane. I don't want to either. But sometimes life decides for us. Ethan started crying and Grace hugged him tightly. Promise me you'll keep flying, even when I'm not here. I promise. And promise you'll try to walk again, to make your daddy happy? Ethan nodded through his tears. That night, Richard made the hardest decision of his life. He called Jennifer. Jennifer, I accept your conditions, but I have one of my own. What is it? You'll spend 3 months in family therapy with me and Ethan before visits start. If you've really changed, that won't be a problem. 3 months? It's either that or court, and I promise I'll fight with everything I have. Jennifer hesitated, but agreed. Fine, but that homeless woman is out of Ethan's life immediately. Agreed. The next day, when Richard took Ethan to the Central Park to say goodbye to Grace, she wasn't there. They asked Anthony, the doorman, who said she had disappeared overnight. She left this for you. Anthony handed him a crumpled note. Richard opened it and read, Richard, thank you for letting me be part of Ethan's life, even if only for a little while. He taught me I can still make children smile, and that's a gift I'll carry forever. Take good care of him. He's special. And if he ever asks about me, tell him Aunt Gracie is flying with Emma Rose, but always watching over him. Grace. Ethan cried hard when he learned Grace had left. In the weeks that followed, he completely regressed. He became apathetic again, stopped trying to walk and barely spoke. The family therapy sessions with Jennifer started off tense. She had changed. She was more mature, more aware of her issues, but her relationship with Ethan was completely strained. Doctor, he looks at me like I'm a ghost, Jennifer confessed to the therapist. Jennifer, you need to understand that to Ethan, you represent abandonment. It'll take time to rebuild that trust. But I've changed. I've been in therapy for 2 years. That's a good start. But inner change doesn't erase external trauma overnight. During one session, Ethan talked about Grace. I want Aunt Gracie. She made me fly. Ethan, Aunt Gracie had to leave, Richard explained patiently. Because of Mommy. The silence in the room was deafening. Why do you say that, Ethan? The therapist asked. Because Mommy yelled, and Aunt Gracie disappeared, just like Mommy yelled and left. Jennifer began to cry silently, realizing the damage she'd caused. After 2 months of intensive therapy, there were slow but meaningful improvements. Jennifer was learning to handle Ethan without pressure or demands, and Ethan was slowly opening up to her again. But he never stopped asking about Grace. One day, Richard decided to look for her. He searched every city shelter, spoke to other homeless people, asked at churches. Nothing. Then Anthony, the doorman, gave him a crucial lead. Doctor, I remembered something. Miss Grace once told me she had a sister in Portland. Said her sister was looking for her, but she was too ashamed to reach out. Do you remember the sister's name? I think it was Helen. Helen something with a P. Richard hired a private investigator. Within 2 weeks, they'd found Helen Parker, Grace Parker Williams's sister. Helen, my name is Richard. I'm looking for your sister, Grace. Grace? Oh my God, you found her? I've been searching for her for 3 years. I found her, but she disappeared again. I really need to talk to her. Why? Is she okay? Richard told the whole story. Helen cried when she heard about her sister's situation. I knew she wasn't doing well after she lost Emma Rose, but I never imagined it had gotten this bad. Do you have any idea where she might be? I know a few places she used to go. I can help look for her. After a week of searching, they found Grace at a city shelter in Newport. She was very thin and clearly ill. Grace? Helen called softly. Grace looked up and froze. Helen, are you really here, or have you become part of my imagination too? I'm really here, sis. I came to get you. Grace began to sob desperately. Helen, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for everything, for disappearing, for not calling, for becoming this. Shh, it's okay. We'll take care of you now. Richard stepped forward slowly. Grace, how are you? Richard, what are you doing here? How's Ethan? He's been asking for you every day. He shouldn't. I disappeared for a reason. What reason? Because I was getting too attached, and people like me can't afford to get attached. Helen interrupted. Grace, what kind of nonsense is that? Of course you can get attached. No, Helen, I can't. Every time I care about something, I lose it. I lost Emma Rose, I lost my home, I lost everything. I can't go through that again. Grace, you didn't lose Emma Rose because you loved her. You lost her because of a terrible accident. But if I hadn't loved her so much, it wouldn't hurt so much now. Richard moved closer. Grace, can I tell you something about Ethan? She nodded. After you left, he regressed a lot. He stopped trying to walk again, became withdrawn. But do you know what he told me yesterday? What? He said he'd rather miss you than never have known you at all. A 3-year-old boy understood something you still can't. Grace fell silent, processing his words. Love doesn't hurt, Grace. Loss does. But love itself is always a gift, even when it's painful. Helen held her sister's hand. Grace, I lost my husband 5 years ago. I know the pain of loss, but I can't let that pain stop me from loving others. How do you do it? How can you love knowing you might lose them? Because the alternative is worse, Richard answered. The alternative is living without any love at all. Grace looked at them both, her eyes filled with tears and doubt. What if I can't do it? What if I hurt Ethan? What if you can, and you bring him happiness? Helen countered. Richard spoke gently. Grace, you need help. You need professional support to heal from the trauma of losing Emma Rose. But that doesn't mean you have to cut ties with people who care about you. People who care about me? Ethan loves you. I care about you deeply. Helen clearly loves you. You're not alone. Grace stayed quiet for a long time. If I accept help, if I try to get better, you won't give up on me if I relapse. Never, Helen and Richard said together. And Ethan, how is he handling things with his mother? Much better. Jennifer has really changed. She's in therapy too. They're rebuilding their relationship. That's good. He deserves to have his mother back. He does. And he deserves to have you too if you want. Grace finally agreed to accept help. Helen took her to Portland, where she began treatment at a clinic specializing in trauma and grief. The process was slow and painful, but she was determined to try. For 3 months, Richard brought Ethan to visit her every weekend. The visits were supervised at first, but it became clear that Grace's presence was beneficial for both of them. Ethan started trying to walk again, motivated by the desire to show Grace his progress. And Grace, seeing his improvement, found new motivation to take care of herself. Aunt Gracie, are you getting better? Ethan asked during one of their visits. I'm trying, my little airplane. Some days are harder than others. Like me with walking? Just like you with walking. Then we're both brave, right? Yes, we are. During her treatment, Grace learned to talk about Emma Rose in a healthier way. She stopped speaking to her as if she was still present, but kept her memory alive in a positive light. Doctor, I'll always miss Emma Rose, but now I understand that I can honor her memory by helping other children, not by pretending she's still here. That's tremendous progress, Grace. And I've learned that Ethan won't replace Emma Rose. He's a different person who deserves to be loved for who he is, not as a substitute for someone I lost. After 6 months of intensive treatment, Grace was stable enough to live independently again. Helen offered for her to stay in Portland, but Grace had other plans. Helen, I want to go back to Newport. Why? Because that's where I can help Ethan. And maybe other children too. Are you sure? Yes, I won't run from my feelings anymore. Richard was moved when Grace called to say she was coming back. Grace, I have a proposal for you. What is it? Besides helping Ethan, how would you feel about working with other children? I have connections at institutions that help kids with trauma. Do you think I'm ready for that? I think you have a special gift for understanding wounded children, and I believe this could be part of your healing too. Grace agreed. With Richard's help, she got a job at an institution that supported children who had experienced family trauma. Ethan was overjoyed when he heard Grace was returning. Daddy, Is Aunt Gracie going to live with us? No, Ethan. She'll have her own place, but you can visit her whenever you want. And will she teach me to fly again? Yes, she will. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The reunion between Ethan and Grace was emotional. Ethan ran, yes, ran, into her arms as soon as he saw her. Aunt Gracie, you're back. Look, I'm walking. I see, champ. I'm so proud of you. And are you better now? Yes, I am. And do you know why? Why? Because I've learned that missing someone we love is better than never having loved at all. Ethan didn't fully understand the words, but he understood the feeling. You won't leave again? I won't leave, Ethan. I might have hard days, but I won't disappear without telling you. Grace's reintegration into Ethan's life happened gradually. She spent a few afternoons a week with him, initially under Richard's supervision. Jennifer, at first, was uneasy about Grace's return. But during one of their family therapy sessions, the psychologist suggested a meeting between the two women. Jennifer, would you like to meet Grace in person? I don't know if that's a good idea. Why not? Because I'm afraid I won't like her and it'll create more conflict. And what if you do like her? Then I'll feel bad for forcing her out of Ethan's life. The meeting between Jennifer and Grace was set at a neutral cafe, without Ethan present. Grace, thank you for agreeing to meet me. Thank you for wanting to meet me. The two women studied each other for a moment. Grace, I want to apologize. When I came back and saw a stranger with my son, I lost it. I didn't stop to understand the situation. I completely understand. You were protecting your son, it's maternal instinct. But I was unfair. Richard told me how you helped Ethan. Ethan helped me just as much as I helped him. Maybe even more. How so? He taught me it's possible to love again, that the heart doesn't run out by loving more people. Jennifer began to understand why Ethan had grown so attached to Grace. Grace, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you resent me for abandoning Ethan? Grace thought carefully before answering. Jennifer, I can't judge anyone's choices. Every woman handles motherhood differently. You recognized you needed help and sought it. That's brave. But Ethan suffered because of my choices. He did. But now he's healing. And he has two women who love him, each in their own way. That's a blessing, not a problem. You don't mind sharing his affection with me? Grace smiled sadly. Jennifer, love isn't a pie that gets smaller when you share it. The more people who love a child, the happier they are. You're very wise. I'm not wise. I've just learned life's too short to waste on jealousy and fighting. From that day on, Jennifer stopped seeing Grace as a threat and began to see her as an ally in raising Ethan. Gradually, a routine formed. Ethan spent alternating weekends with Jennifer, and during the week, Grace visited him a few times. Richard, initially worried about jealousy between the two women, was surprised by the harmony that developed. Daddy, do I have two mums? Ethan asked one day. What do you mean, son? I have Mommy Jennifer and Aunt Gracie. Are they both my mums? Richard wasn't sure how to answer. What do you think? I think so. Mommy teaches me home things and Aunt Gracie teaches me how to fly. I need both. Richard smiled, realizing Ethan had found his own way to understand the situation. Meanwhile, Grace was thriving in her work at the shelter. Her special ability to connect with traumatized children was helping many families. Grace, you have a gift, said Dr. Miller, the shelter's director. The children respond to you in a way they don't with anyone else. I think it's because I understand their pain. I've been where they are. Have you ever considered studying psychology? College? At my age? Age doesn't matter. You have life experience no book can teach. The idea stuck with Grace. She talked to Helen about it. Sis, do you think I can go back to school? Grace, you were always the smartest in the family. Of course you can, but I'm already 45. So what? You'll be 45 either way. Better to be 45 with a degree than without one. Grace decided to apply for psychology school. Richard offered financial help, but she politely refused. "Richard, you've already done so much for me. I want to earn this on my own. At least let me pay for a prep course." "That I'll accept." During the months of preparation, Ethan became Grace's biggest cheerleader. "Aunt Gracie, are you going to be a doctor like the one who takes care of me?" "I'll be a heart doctor, Ethan." "A heart doctor?" "Yes, I'll help kids with broken hearts, like you had." "And you'll succeed?" "I'll try my hardest." "Then you will. You're really good at fixing broken things." Ethan's words deeply moved Grace. She realized she'd found her life's purpose, helping mend broken hearts, especially children's. On the day of the entrance exam, Grace was nervous. "What if I fail?" she confessed to Richard. "Then you try again next year." "No problem. I'm afraid of disappointing you all." "Grace, you've already given us so much. Whatever the result, we're proud of you." Ethan drew a picture of Grace studying and wrote below it in his childish handwriting, "To Aunt Gracie, the smartest in the world." Grace passed her college entrance exam. When the results came out, she called Richard, crying. "Richard, I did it. I passed." "I knew you would. I want to tell Ethan in person." When Grace arrived at the house to share the news, Ethan was playing in the garden. "Ethan, I have some news." "What?" "I passed the exam. I'm going to study to be a doctor." Ethan stopped playing and ran to hug her. "I knew it. I knew you could do it." "How did you know?" "Because you're magic. Magic people can do anything." That night, there was a small celebration at Richard's house. Jennifer was also there and congratulated Grace sincerely. "Grace, I'm so happy for you. Ethan will be proud to have a psychologist as a second mom." It was the first time Jennifer had used the term second mom to refer to Grace. It was a deeply meaningful moment. "Jennifer, thank you. That means so much to me." "To me too. Ethan is such a happy child now, and part of that is thanks to you." During her first years of college, Grace balanced her studies with work at the institution and visits to Ethan. It was hectic, but she felt more alive than she had in years. Ethan followed her academic progress with curiosity. "Aunt Gracie, what did you learn today in grown-up school?" "I learned about how children think and feel." "Didn't you already know that?" "I knew some things, but now I'm learning why things work the way they do." "And when you're a doctor, will you take care of me?" "You don't need special care anymore, Ethan. You're fine. But I like it when you take care of me. And I always will, just in a different way now." Ethan had grown so much over those years. Now 6 years old, he was a happy, normal child who ran, played, and had friends at school. The trauma of his parents' separation was behind him, and he had developed a healthy relationship with both Jennifer and Grace. Richard, watching his son's progress, felt deeply grateful for Grace's presence in their lives. "Grace, you know you've changed our family forever, right? You've changed my life too. You gave me a second chance at happiness. And Emma Rose, how do you feel about her now?" "I miss her every day. But it's not the kind of sadness that paralyzes me anymore. It's the kind that motivates me to help other children." "Do you think she'd be proud of you?" "I think so. She always loved it when I helped other kids. Now I do it professionally." Time passed, and Grace graduated with honors in psychology. Her thesis was on childhood trauma and recovery through play. Ethan, now 9, was there at her graduation. "Aunt Gracie, now you're an official doctor." "Yes, I am." "Will you still make me fly?" "Whenever you want." "Even though I'm big now?" "Ethan, some 50-year-olds still need to fly sometimes." After graduation, Grace opened her own practice, specializing in child therapy. Richard helped with the initial investment, seeing it as a contribution to the community. The practice quickly flourished. Grace had found her true calling, helping children and families heal from trauma and rebuild their bonds. One afternoon, 5 years after their first meeting in the park, Richard brought Ethan, now 14, to visit Grace at her office. "Aunt Gracie, do you remember the first time you made me fly?" "How could I forget? It was one of the most special days of my life." "Why?" "Because that's when I learned I could still make a child smile. It was when I started to heal." "And me? What did I learn?" What do you think you learned? Ethan thought for a moment. I learned that different people can love each other, that you don't have to be blood-related to care for one another. Richard felt his eyes fill with tears. His son had grown into a sensitive and wise young man. And I learned that everyone has pain, but we can choose whether to let it destroy us or use it to help others, Ethan continued. Grace was moved by the maturity of the boy she'd met at age 3, silent from trauma. Ethan, do you remember how you felt before we met? I do. I felt lost, scared. I thought everyone would leave. And now? Now I know that even when people leave, love stays. And there's always someone willing to love us, if we let them. Just then, Jennifer arrived at the office. She and Richard had developed a warm friendship over the years, united by their love for their son. Sorry I'm late. How was Ethan's presentation at school? It was great, Ethan answered excitedly. I talked about non-traditional families and used ours as an example. Our family? Jennifer asked curiously. Yeah, I said I have a dad, a birth mom who loves me but lives far away, and a second mom who chose to love me. And that makes me really lucky. The 3 most important people in Ethan's life exchanged emotional glances. Ethan, don't you feel confused by this situation? Grace asked. No, I feel loved times 3. Richard laughed loudly. Love times 3. I like that. Aunt Gracie taught me that the heart grows when it loves more people. It doesn't shrink. Years passed. Ethan became a young lawyer specializing in family law, inspired by his own experience growing up in an unconventional family. Grace became a respected psychologist, renowned for her work in family therapy and childhood trauma. Richard, now 55, looked back in awe at the path their lives had taken since that chance meeting in the park. On a special Sunday, the extended family gathered to celebrate Ethan's 30th birthday. Jennifer had remarried and had another child, but remained close to Ethan. Grace, at 60, was still single, but fulfilled both professionally and personally. Everyone, I'd like to make a toast, Ethan announced during lunch. Go ahead, son, Richard said. I want to toast the people who taught me that family isn't just who gives you life, it's who chooses to stay. Dad, thank you for never giving up on me. Mom, thank you for coming back and becoming the mother I needed. Aunt Gracie, thank you for teaching me to fly when I couldn't even walk. Grace was quietly crying. Ethan, do you have any idea how you changed my life? I do, the same way you changed mine. How so? You taught me we can choose how to handle pain. We can let it destroy us or use it to build something good. Grace thought of Emma Rose, as she always did. But now, the thought wasn't accompanied by unbearable pain, just gratitude. You know, Ethan, I think Emma Rose would be happy to know her loss led me to you. I'm sure she would, and I think she'd understand that loving me doesn't take away from the love you have for her. How did you get so wise, kid? I learned from the strongest women I know, he said, looking at Grace and Jennifer. That day, Grace realized her healing journey was complete. Not because he had forgotten Emma Rose or stopped missing her, but because he had found a way to honor her memory through the love he gave to other children. Ethan, in turn, had become a living example that children can recover from trauma when surrounded by unconditional love, even if that love comes from unexpected places. And Richard had learned that sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as problems, and that opening your heart to different people can transform an entire family. A few years later, Grace received an offer to write a book about her experience. The title would be Learning to Fly: How Love Can Heal Family Trauma. Are you going to accept? Ethan asked when she told him about the offer. Only if you help me write it. Me? But I'm not a psychologist. No, but you're the greatest expert in overcoming adversity that I know. I'll do it, on one condition. What? I want to dedicate the book to Emma Rose and all the children who need to learn they can trust love again. Grace smiled, knowing she had made the right decision all those years ago when she chose not to run from love but to embrace it. The book became a success, helping thousands of families across America understand that non-traditional family structures can be just as healthy and loving as traditional ones. Ethan, now a successful lawyer, used his own story to help families in conflict find solutions that prioritize children's well-being over personal disputes. Richard, at 60, had become a more compassionate businessman, using part of his resources to fund social projects for vulnerable children. And Grace, at 65, continued counseling children and families, but now also gave talks across the country, spreading her message that love, when genuine and persistent, can overcome any trauma. One Sunday afternoon, 25 years after that first meeting in the park, the three of them reunited in the same place where it all began. The park had been renovated, but the bench where Grace used to sit was still there. "Can you believe it's been 25 years?" Richard asked. "Feels like yesterday," Grace replied. "To me, it feels like a lifetime ago," Ethan said. "I can't even imagine what my life would have been like if we hadn't met." "It would have been different," Grace said, "but I believe life would have found a way to bring us together somehow. Some people are meant to meet." Ethan looked at the bench where Grace used to talk with Emma Rose. "Aunt Gracie, do you still talk to Emma Rose?" "Sometimes, but not like before. Now I talk to her when I'm happy, not when I'm desperate." "What do you tell her?" "I tell her about you, about how you became an amazing man. I think she's happy knowing I took good care of you." Ethan's eyes welled up. "Can I confess something?" "Of course." "Sometimes I talk to her too. I thank her for sending you to find me." Grace began to cry, but they were tears of joy. "Ethan, you know it wasn't Emma Rose who sent me, right?" "I know, but I like to think it was. I like to think there's a bigger plan, that the right people find each other at the right time." Richard watched the conversation in silence, thinking about how that chance encounter had changed not just 3 lives, but hundreds of others through the work each of them had done because of it. "You know what I find most amazing?" he said. "What?" they asked together. "None of us is the same person we were 25 years ago, and yet we keep choosing to love each other, even as different people." "That's true," Grace agreed. "Ethan became a man, I became a psychologist, you became more sensitive, but the love between us has only grown." "That's true love," Ethan said. "Love that grows with people, that adapts to changes." At that moment, a small child ran through the park, tripped and fell. Instinctively, the three of them stood up to help. The child's mother got there first, but thanked them for their concern. "Some things never change," Richard laughed. "You two will always want to take care of children. And you'll always want to take care of the two of us," Grace countered. "True. We're a family of caretakers." As the sun began to set, they prepared to leave. But before they did, Ethan asked, "Aunt Gracie, can you make me fly one last time?" "Ethan, you're 28 years old." "So what? You said even 50-year-olds need to fly sometimes." Grace laughed and agreed. Right there in the park where it all began, she made Ethan fly one more time. Passers-by watched curiously as a 65-year-old woman played with a grown man as if he were a child. "There," she said when they finished. "Now you can fly on your own for the rest of your life." "I don't want to fly alone, I want to fly with you." "And we'll fly together," Richard said. "Because that's what family is. People who choose to fly together, no matter what." As they walked back to the car, Grace took one last look at the bench where she used to sit. "Thank you, Emma Rose," she whispered in her heart, "for teaching me that love doesn't end, it just changes." And for the first time in 25 years, she felt her daughter was at peace, just as she was. The end of the story. Now tell me what you thought of this story of resilience and love. Do you believe families can form in non-traditional ways and still be full of love? Share your thoughts in the comments. We can't wait to read your reflections. Thank you so much for joining us on this emotional journey. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.